time, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome all our Downton Abbey people here. Everyone looks lovely. Thank you. I'm going to introduce Brenda later, but I just want to welcome her. She's our speaker today, and her guest is Kathy Granville, and this is Brenda Zolli here. And we look forward to having her speak, and I will introduce her after lunch. Okay, we have some guests today, and I think one of them's not here, but the guest that we have, Susan Faherty. Hi, welcome. Just say where you're from, that would be great. She's from Falmouth. Nice to have you. Welcome. Okay, and then we have Joan Ford. Okay. Joan? She's from Mashpee. Welcome. Okay, we have Diane Spencer?
Plymouth, Massachusetts.
She's from Plymouth, Massachusetts. Nice to have you. Okay, Maggie? Maggie's?
I'm from Falmouth.
She's from Falmouth as well. Welcome. And I think we have another guest, but I don't think Nancy's here yet, right? I don't think so. Okay. And I'm going to introduce one new member because we introduced tons of them last Wednesday. But Patty, where is Patty?
Falmouth, Massachusetts.
Thank you. And you notice the stickers, the yellow stickers are their guests and the pink ones are our new members. And while we're doing the new members, I want to introduce Mary Liz McCahill and to thank Mary Liz. She spearheaded the blanket drive, but I have to thank each and every one of you. It's amazing what you've done. Unbelievable.
I am just overwhelmed by this, and we are going to go down on Friday to Hyannis to a baby center and deliver this. If anybody that you know wants to deliver, wants to donate, I will make another trip in about another week, so no problem. Just drop them off at my house. Two things. We have had 75 new members since our tea last May. 75, that's huge. That is like a third of our membership. So you ladies are getting the word out there that we are having fun and we're doing good work here, and that's just wonderful. We had our tea last week, 72 members were included. I wasn't there, I don't know how many came, 35 or so? 35 members came. We have 3 new members since last week so we're already starting our list for our next tea that is coming fall. If you have moved, or if you know somebody has moved, please let me know. I'm the one who maintains the records of the database, so that I can update who lives where and anything that needs to be. And if you know birthdays or illnesses or anything, just let us know, because we really want to reach out and be supportive of all our members. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And I want to thank our greeters, Jean, Terry, and Jane. Thank you, Jane. So Terry and Jean did the new members' tea, and it was phenomenal. And I want to thank them again. We all had a wonderful time, and everything was delicious, and it was fun. It was really nice to get to meet all the new members and have the big group. We all made a bunch of friends, found a lot of contacts. It was a lot of fun. So a warm thank you to those two. Thank you. And I have to thank all the board for doing the flower arrangements in the teapots. They kind of pulled it together. That's why they're all so different and fun. So if you did a teapot, please raise your hand. Mary Liz, you have to raise a few hands. Thank you. And I want to thank Barbara and Susan, they're still working, for doing the 50-50. But with that 50-50, you get a chance at winning a teapot. So make sure that you put your money in. Okay, thank you, girls. Okay, Pat, I'm gonna give it to you for a second. This is Pat, she's been amazing. Even when she was dancing.
Never again. So last month we did a icebreaker while we were eating. Said everybody seemed to have had a good time, so I thought we'd do it again this month. On your table is a little Ziploc baggie, and in it are a bunch of questions. So one person will take the bag, take out a question, answer it, put the question back in, and pass it around. And this way, we'll just find out a little bit more about each other during our lunch. So enjoy.
And also, I want to thank Pat for those of you who have not had a chance to look at the memory board. The memory board out there is, she's taken each month or each year, she's taking something from pictures. So your pictures may be on it, so please look. Okay, and I forgot to tell you, the 50-50 this month is for capabilities. So we will be giving capabilities just like we're doing every month this year in honor of our 25th anniversary. We're topping it up to $250. It started with $2,500 to, what was it called? Independence House. I went there, I just couldn't think the name of it. And it was heartwarming. Okay, ladies, where's Jean? Ladies, there's Jean. Our biggest fundraiser for our luncheon is, as you know, the fashion show. And I'm gonna have Linda speak too, because we have to cap it at 200, and we had to cap it last year and everybody didn't get in, so you need to really listen up this time. This is so fun.
This is for the basket raffle. We had some fabulous baskets last year, and I know we'll have them again. The fashion show is the 20th of June, which is Tuesday, obviously. But all baskets need to be to my house by Saturday, 17th. Is that right? 18, 19, yeah. And you can drop them off at my house anytime, the Thursday, Friday, up to Saturday, because we have to organize them, print all the cards, do all the information, and then get them here for Monday. So they have to be at my house by Saturday evening so that we can all work on getting them together on Sunday. Also, if you would please include a card, nicely written, and attach it to your basket. If you want to have whoever was involved in the donation of the basket, you may list them. We don't list them on the program. It's too risky that if I forgot somebody, it wouldn't be good. But we do just do a general thank you to all the members on the tables. But if you say book club, and if you want to list the members of the book club, or if 3 or 4 people got together and did their basket, you can just put that on the card that, just put donated by and list people. Is that it? You do not have to put the names. If you want to just put donated by book club 12, or donated by friends, or you don't even have to put donated. But if you do want your names there, please put them on there, because I won't know who donated them, and I might forget somebody from a book club or somebody in a group, whatever. But so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you can drop them off at my house anytime. There's going to be a drop-off location, but it's usually during the day, and not everybody can get there for that. But you can bring it to my house anytime, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. Any questions? I'm sorry? Oh, 23 Meadowbrook Road. That will be also on there. 23 Meadowbrook Road in Mashpee.
We're going to be sending out an email to our members, and that will have the information on there so that you know. And it'll probably be, last year I think it was Jane Murphy and myself, because we can open up our SUVs and put the seats down. And so we'll be at a certain location. Last year it was the board meeting at Mashpee TV, and we had it sitting there. People put their baskets in there. So we try to make it very easy for you. If you need it picked up, please let me know. Anyway, we appreciate the baskets. That is our fundraiser. When you raffle those baskets off, you put your ticket in the basket that you want. So please, we would love your baskets. Thank you. Now, the fashion show is Port Cargo, and it's on the 20th of June. And I'm going to give you Linda, because you're going to want to listen to how to sign up.
Susan, can I just interject for the raffle tickets? Anyone need?
I think I have.
It's for all these lovely teapots.
There's some more over there. Oh, okay. Get the teapots too.
Yes. Huh? I'm part of that package now. For the fashion show luncheon, what everyone needs to do is send in your check or pay via Venmo and list, if you are a table of 10, one person send me a list of who's going to be seated at your table. If you're 3 people, one person can send with the names of who you would like to be seated with. What I do then is take all of these little pieces of paper and put groups together to fill tables of 10. So if you're a smaller group, not to worry, you'll have the balance of your table filled with another smaller group. If you're a table of 10, you'll be seated together. Does that make sense?
Linda.
Yes.
If you have a table of 10 and you send in the list of names, you don't have to include all the checks for those people.
Correct. Each person can pay individually. I don't have to have the 10 checks with the list. I just need a list so that I can then make sure everybody's paid and it's all together.
Any questions? Oh, and the price is, this is our fundraiser. The price is $55 for members and $65 for non-members. So just make sure that it's not our regular 36 this time. Okay, so this supports our scholarship program. So Sue, would you say a little bit about a scholarship program? This is really important. Our main part of our money comes from this and golf and a few other things, but this really supports.
Ladies, I would like to thank you all for your support of the scholarships. We have chosen 3 young ladies who are seniors at Mashpee High School. What we look at, and we had 53 applicants this year. And the applications come in a package, usually 6 to 7, in the packet itself. So it takes myself and 2 others, Linda Gurvich and Sadie. We take an afternoon actually to go through it. What we look at is a grade point average. We look at need, and we look at community service. Our scholarship winners this year are Autumn Bailey, and she has been accepted at Framingham State, Fitchburg State, Salem State, and Mass College of Liberal Arts. She's going to be an English major. Our second winner is Jaden Bryant. She has been accepted at UMass Amherst, Bryan University, Suffolk University, and UMass Boston, and she wants to be a finance major. And our third winner is Jasmine Vieira, and she has been accepted at Pace University, BC, BU, and she wants to go into nursing pre-med. Just as a side note, once we have chosen our winners, these applications are shredded because there is too much information, personal information that are on these applications. And we figure it's no one's business. That's why they're shredded and taken care of that way. But again, we have 3 young ladies this year. We thank you for all of your help in the scholarships.
And then I'm going to thank Cindy Collins, who has taken over the golf, who is the recipient for the money for that goes to the scholarship fund too.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, and I was going to mention that as well. For those of you who have not yet signed up, we still have an opening. There's 1 spot left for golf. So if you're thinking about it, please do sign up. We'd love to have you join us. We are putting together a wonderful time. We too will be hoping to raise some money for the scholarship fund. And this time, I know for those of you who participated last year, we allowed you to purchase mulligans. We're going to offer you the chance to win to buy 2 of them this time. So for those of you coming, please make sure you bring cash because we'll have other opportunities, as well as a raffle as well. And I know it's just 1 week following the fashion show. It's Tuesday, the 27th of June. But I have heard from some of the foursomes, they're going to put together a small basket for a donation. A couple of those will. We've had some single donators as well. I asked other foursomes to consider that as another opportunity. We'll have as many fun prizes as we can and continue to raise money for a very worthwhile cause. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, and just a few housekeeping notes. I keep announcing this, but remember, November and December, our luncheon is moved because of the holidays. So we don't want to have our luncheon a day before, 2 days before Thanksgiving. So we moved the November, and that's another big, huge fundraiser. That's our boutique. Holiday Boutique is Thursday, November the 16th, and the December luncheon is Thursday, December 14th. November 16th and December 14th. We'll be sending it out, and it'll be on the website. The July luncheon, next time, June, it will be here. The July luncheon will be in the Poppy tent. We'll keep you informed on that. And we sent out revised bylaws. And the major change on that is that we're going to be voting on it at the annual meeting, so we don't have to vote on it at the annual meeting again. We're moving it to another month because it's just too much going on at the fashion show. But please read the bylaws. Any questions, let us know. Helinka and Joanne were fabulous. Helinka went and talked to an attorney to make sure that we're 501c3 compliant. A lot of the information is for being 501c3 compliant. They did an amazing job, hours and hours working on it. And if you know anybody that needs a Get Well card or any help, please let us know. We really want to be supportive of our members. And so if you find anybody that you know that needs a card or a little pick-me-up or help, please let us know. Elizabeth Jorgensen does a phenomenal job with her cards. Right, Lynn? Right.
Yes, right.
So anyway, so now enjoy the fun.
Our speaker is about ready, and I just want to thank you all for coming and supporting our charity, and also to tell you who looks amazing. Everybody looks so lovely today, thank you. And keep your headpieces because August of 2024, Carolyn Holmes is working on signing the papers for Cheryl Fay to come back to do Queen Elizabeth. That'll be another one though, that'll be to get your ticket in soon. I mean, once it's open, because that'll probably be a sellout as well. So anyway, I want to introduce you to Brenda. Full disclosure, I know you think I'm from New Orleans, I was, but I actually lived in Edinburgh, Scotland for 6 years. So Scotland is very dear to our hearts, and our youngest one was born there. So it's so interesting to see what she was telling us today at the table. So she is British and spent her early years in Yorkshire, which remains her most favorite part of England. She studied to become a registered nurse in London, specializing in pediatrics. Between nursing jobs, she sometimes enjoyed taking a break and working as a nanny. The most memorable experience was when she worked on a large country estate in the north of Scotland, owned by Sir John Sinclair. She took care of 2 of his grandchildren. She was addressed as nanny and wore a uniform and ruled over the nursery wing. She requested to take her meals with the rest of the staff, which was much more interesting than dining with the family, who carried on as if she wasn't there. This gives her good insight into what it is and what was really like being in service. She had has had a long and interesting nursing career, which I know a lot of people in this room have as well. It was this that brought her to Boston to work at Boston Children's Hospital. She had planned to work for a year, but she met her future husband, Frank, 5 days after arriving. They have been happily married for almost 55 years. Yeah. Brenda reads widely and loves history and art. Because of this, when retirement loomed, she looked around to find something to engage her, far removed from the medical field. She became a docent at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, where she spent 11 fascinating years giving tours, learning about not only the art, but also the history of Mrs. Gardner in the 19th century. Those of you who have been there, it's just a fascinating place. She hopes you enjoy stepping back in history for a short time and getting the inside scoop of both afternoon tea and what really goes on below stairs. So Brenda will introduce you to Maggie Braithwaite, and the head parlormaid who has worked for Lord and Lady Carperby of Downton House in Yorkshire since she was 14 in their large manor house. The year is 1900, and she has lots of stories about the family and the other servants. Any similarity to a now famous TV series, Downton Abbey, is purely coincidental. Some of Brenda's presentation will be about the history and etiquette of tea parties, with a demonstration of the fine art of making a real cup of tea. Now, I present Brenda.
No, I got this. I'm wired up, I think. You hear me? First of all, before I go into my Maggie character, can everybody hear me? No? No? Really? Can everybody hear me now? I've got a little mic on I'm trying to work out. You want to check, make sure? He said it went up.
Wardrobe malfunction, just a minute.
Oh dear.
Now try it.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, try it now.
I don't think it's working.
Yeah, it's working, but
Yeah, but they said they can't hear. You can't hear at the back?
Pull the microphone up.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now? Okay. Well, before I become Maggie, I just want to tell you it's nice to come here, and I love all your hats, your fascinators. It makes me feel quite at home, actually. I got into the idea of doing Maggie as a character because, you know, Downton Abbey was a lot of fun, and all of you that watched it, you know. From my own experiences being in service and doing things like that, I have to tell you it was highly unrealistic. That the lord and ladies or whoever home you were working in were not that interested in your personal life and your love lives and things like that. And especially at this period in 1900. So Maggie will tell you a slightly different story about being in service. So I'm just going to turn around and I'm going to go from 2023 back to 1900. So here I go. Good afternoon, ladies. My name is Maggie Braithwaite, and I'm actually the head parlourmaid at Downton House, which is in Yorkshire, and is owned as a big estate, and it's owned by Lord and Lady Carperby, and they have 3 sons, and it's a large estate, and there's a grouse shooting moor attached to it. I went into service because we were very poor. My mum and dad, my dad was only a labourer really on a farm, and my mum she had about 10 children. Some of them died along the way. And of course, when I got to be 14, I couldn't stay going to school, and I had to go out to work and bring some money into the family. And the big thing was available to a little girl like me was to go into service. So going into service was a bit like a prison, you know. You went in and you were really not your own person. You found out fairly quickly. But when I started out, I was just a little, really they called it the tweenie. She was a very lowly character in the bottom of the hierarchy of the house, and she worked between the kitchen and the house, and all the dirty, dusty jobs that she had to do, clean the fireplaces and wash all the pots after a big dinner, and she was at everybody's beck and call. Well, you could work your way up, and of course I did. I was considered quite a smart girl when I was going to school, and I had hopes that perhaps if it had been different, I might have become a school teacher, but that weren't to be. But I did like to read. So I guess, I rose up the ranks a little bit. First off, I helped out in the kitchen as a kitchen maid, and then I went up and became a chambermaid. The chambermaids take care of the bedrooms, and the kitchen maids are obviously in the kitchen, and the housemaids do everything on the first floor. They dust and clean and keep it all perfect for her ladyship and his lordship. So life in a big house is it's like a family, and even amongst the servants. So first of all, at the top of the rank, there's Lord and Lady Carperby, and they're not terrible employers. They're not the sort of people that you wouldn't want to work for them. There are some that are like that. One of my friends who worked in a big house, she said the master of her house, if she was dusting the stairs and he happened to come up, she had to turn her face to the wall, so he didn't have to look at her face. And quite often they'd give you a name, but it wasn't your name, and they'd just call you that because they could remember it. So another house where I met somebody from, all the footmen were called Henry. Whether the name was George or Tom or whatever it was, they were all called Henry. So there are things that went on like that, but where I've been at Carperby Hall, it's not as bad as all that. So we have Lord and Lady Carperby. They have 3 sons. They have, the oldest one is named Simon. He's a young man now, and he got married recently. And I can't say I really like his wife very much. I think if she ever moves into the Carperby residence, I think I'll have a hard time with her. She's very demanding. And then the next son is Richard, and Richard's away at school. You know, the upper classes send their children off to school very young, and they're about 8 years old when they leave, and they go to what they call a preparatory school, and then after that they go to what we call a public school, which isn't public at all, it's private. So he's at Eton. He's a nice lad. And then there's my favourite, Nicholas. Nicholas, he's a sweetheart, but he's away at school too. He's at prep school. So the boys aren't in the house. They did have a governess till they were older, and a tutor, but they've gone now because you don't need them when the boys are off to school. And there is Nanny. Oh my goodness, Nanny. She must be 110. She was the nanny to Lord Carperby, and they didn't want to put her out, you know. So they were kind to her, really. Lord Carperby was very fond of her, actually, being a substitute mum when he was a little boy. And she's got a little cottage on the grounds, and so she's still around, and she comes in every now and then, and she's very good at needlework, and she sometimes will do some mending or something like that. And then we've got a cook, Mrs. Sayers. Mrs. Sayers she's a lovely cook. She's got a very bad temper, I'll tell you, but she's a lovely cook. And she does teach you things if you watch. And then under her, the kitchen maids, they said they're terrified of her. And then then we have, then there's a sort of the higher-ups in the servants' quarters. There's Mr. Cutler, the butler. Can you imagine being a butler and called Mr. Cutler? But that's what we call, of course, we make a lot of jokes about it, you can imagine. And Mr. Cutler's very much on his dignity, and he's very, very proper. He wants everything done exactly the way he wants. And then there's Mrs. Johnson. She's the housekeeper. She's the lady that carries the keys and checks all the supplies. And you can't get away with anything with her. She counts everything up, locks, standle, and she's got her keys at her belt here. Now she's getting on a bit in years. No, well I am too, but I'm a bit further behind than her. I'm hoping in the nicest possible way that perhaps she'll retire, and then maybe Lord Carperby might offer me the post, and then I'd be housekeeper. And then what I'm really hoping is that I'll get a little cottage in the grounds and I'll be all set for my old age. I've been saving all my paychecks, all the money. It isn't much, but I put it away because when I am old, really old, that's what I'll have to live on. And it won't be very much. But if I lived on the estate, I'd have some benefits. So I'm hoping, that's what I'm hoping about. Who else do we have? We have a valet, that's Mr. Walker. He takes care of Lord Carperby, does all his clothes and things like that. He's a bit snotty, we don't have much to do with him. The upper servants think they're much above us, I'll tell you. And then, who have I missed out? I've got the housekeeper, I've forgotten, I must have missed somebody out. It'll come to me in a minute. So it's like a little hierarchy. You've got the upper layers of the house and the children, and then you've got the upper layers of the servants. Now, what I'd like to be the housekeeper for is I'd have my own room. Mrs. Sayers, no, she's the cook. Mrs. Johnson, she has a nice suite in a nice bedroom, and her own little parlour, as does Mr. Cutler. It'd be nice to live like that. So where do you think the maids live? Up in the garret, yeah. Do you ever go up to a garret? It's freezing in the winter. The wind whistles through those windows, and in the summer it's boiling hot. And there's nothing, they never think about us, you know, we're up there. Anyway, so the housekeeper and the butler and the valet, they have their own quarters, and that's really very nice. And the maids of today, they're not like it was when I was young. They're kind of lazy, actually. You know, they're young. They're never like you were when you were young. But they have to get up ever so early. They're up at dawn sometimes. Do you know what the dawn chorus is? It's when all the birds wake up. All of a sudden, in the middle of the night, it seems, they all start singing. And that's about the time some of the maids have to be up. And why they have to be up, they have to get the whole house ready for the family to come downstairs before they start making breakfast and clean all the fireplaces and put fresh wood or coals on them. And they have to dust and sweep the downstairs so it's all perfect. So when her ladyship comes down, it's just as she wants it. She has been known, no, I don't think she's that fussy, but our housekeeper has definitely been known to go around with a white glove on and just have a check to make sure you've dusted properly. Not very. And you know, I have heard there are mistresses that put something under the rug, like maybe a sixpence or something, and they will check under the rug to see if you cleaned under the rug, like lifted it up and brushed it. So you won't, if the sixpence is gone, they know you've done it. But if it is still there, they know you didn't. So there's things like that go on. We also have a lot of other servants. I can't give you all their names because there's so many of them. Although it would be said that we have a very small staff. There's only about 25. When you think about it, 25 people to look after 2 people. It's a bit off, a bit funny, really, when you think about it. There's my man with all those children and nobody to help her. And Lady Carperby has a lady's maid, and Lord Carperby has a valet, and there's, you know, the butler and the cook and the housekeeper and the maids. But they also have, there's little lad that lives in, he's in the base, in the lower reaches of the house, called the hall boy. And his job in the morning is he has to clean everybody's boots. And you know, there's a lot of mud in Yorkshire when you go outside. It's not all paved roads. And he has to clean all the mud off and polish them and put them outside the door again, so his lordship and the guests and people. And sometimes there's a lot of boots if there's company. And then, what else do we have? The tweenie I told you about. We have dairy maids to help with the milking, but we don't have much to do with them. They're more attached to the farm. And laundry maids. Can you imagine how many pairs of bloomers there are to wash in a big house like that with all those people, worse women? So there's a lot of laundry, and it's done in a wash house far away from the house. And then they have to iron it all. It's a hard job. I wouldn't want to be a laundry maid. And then we have, there's a grouse moor, so his lordship has his friends up from London for the season. I think it starts in about November. They come up and they have these shooting parties, and they go out and they shoot pheasant. You know what they are? Those pretty birds they are on the moors. And then they bring them in and, you know, has to pluck them and clean them. As we're all put into that. And then there's so much cooking to do and so much cleaning when we've got company. So on the moor you have gameskeeper and people who help. They're called beaters. They go out and they beat the bushes so the birds fly out. It's a very busy house. And sometimes we go to London. They've got a big house in London, but Lady Carperby doesn't love it very much down there, so we don't go that often. But when we do, everything has to be. We have to take everything with us, and we have to cover all the furniture up with sheets before we leave. And yes, it's quite an undertaking. So what I was thinking, sometimes people say, are you married? You know, why you call everybody Mrs. in service, even you're not a Mrs. It's for respectability, you see. They don't like the idea of a lot of unmarried ladies all living together there. So they call you Mrs., so it's Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Sayers. And I'm called Maggie, mind you. I'm not married. Sometimes I feel a bit sad about that. And I see, I'd like to have had a family, perhaps that had a job working somewhere else. But I never really met anybody except one lovely footman. He came about, it's a long time ago. I was just a lass. I didn't have any snow on the roof then. And I came and he had lovely blue eyes. And he liked me too. We used to exchange looks. That's about all you could do, really. You're not allowed to have followers. That's, gentlemen callers. But it didn't work out because his name was John. They didn't call him Henry. It was John. And he had ambition. And he was very handsome. And he ended up going to London as a footman, and he was very happy there. And he wrote to me a couple of times, but it didn't pan out. So that was the end of my romance. That's the only one I ever had. I didn't fancy any of the other men. I don't think some of them would have even looked at me either. So what else to get up to in the house? We get a half day off a week, but that's on Sunday. And some of that we have to go to church. And we don't all get the half day. Some of us, we all have to go to church. And some might get the rest of the afternoon off, and some have to work. And we have, sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get a day off a month just for yourself. It's a bit difficult, really, because if you deplete the staff, the others have to work twice as hard. And we don't really have a holiday, a proper holiday. Sometimes I'll get to go home and see my mum. She's getting really old now, and I have to, before she passes away, I want to keep an eye on her. And trying to think what else to tell you about. So we don't get much time off, but we do have fun. That's what I meant to tell you. We do make our own pleasures and our own fun, and we're all in the lower reaches of the house, where it can be a bit dark, But we make our own fun, and sometimes I think Lady and Lord Carberby, they must be quite amazed at the amount of laughing that comes out of the basement. Because somebody tells a joke about Mr. Cutler, probably. And we have our own life. It's got its little pleasures. And that's what my life is like. So I was going to talk to you a little bit today about tea, because I think you ladies just enjoyed a very nice tea, and I'm kind of set up here to just sort of show you about it. And I thought what I might like to do is tell you a little bit about the history of tea. Well, what on earth, how on earth would a housemaid with not much education even know about such a thing? Well, this is how it happened. I was in the library. We have to dust the books every so often. Have you ever been in a library where the bookcases are up to the ceiling? I was up a tall ladder, and I had my duster out, and I was dusting. And you know, I did like to read. So I'd look at all the titles, and I'd think, oh, that looks good. And then I saw a book. It was The History of Tea. I thought, what tea? Tea comes from the grocers in town. What do you mean, the history of tea? I never thought how it got to the grocers. I never really thought anything about it. Now, her ladyship likes tea. She has afternoon tea most days. And she drinks something called Earl Grey. Ooh, it's horrible. It tastes like perfume. Have anybody tasted it? Oh, what I like a cup of tea, I like what Cook makes. She makes it in a big brown teapot, and it's so strong, it'll stand the spoon up on its own. If you put the spoon in the cup, it doesn't even fall over. And it sits there, and we'll have a cup of tea every time we can turn around. She'll make another cup of tea. And I have to tell you, it keeps you going in that long, long day, which doesn't end till about 10 by the time you've done everything. So I pulled the book off the bookcase. We're not supposed to do that, you see. These are very valuable books, all leather and everything. But you know, what gets me is nobody reads them. I've never seen anybody in the library reading. They go and smoke their cigars, but I've never seen them take a book down. Anyway, so I'll tell you a little bit what I found out, but I'll tell you how it happened when I was up that ladder. His lordship came into the library and caught me right in the act of looking at the book. I nearly fell off the ladder with shock and horror. I thought, oh dear, I'm going to get the sack, and no reference. And I'll have to go home to my mam, and she's going to be so upset and worried and everything. My paycheck, whatever I made, wasn't much, but it helped her. My whole life flashed in front of my eyes. And to my amazement, he looked at me and he said, what are you doing up there, Nanny? And I said I'm dusting, and I just looking at this book. And he said, well, that's very interesting. I've never seen a servant read before. And he was quite intrigued by this. He said, you can read, right? I said, oh, yes, I can read. And then he said, what are you reading about? And I told him, and he said, I don't really know much about that myself. Well, instead of telling me off and giving me the sack, he said, you know what, I'd like to encourage you to read, so what I'm going to tell you, he says, put the book in your apron and take it upstairs to your room, and I'll let you read it. You can read the whole thing. But he said, don't tell her ladyship. And he said, if there's anything else you really want to read, he says, just ask me and I'll tell you if it's a book that's suitable for you. And you can do it. And I started to get an education because I like to read, and I read all about tea. So tea, does anybody know where tea started? In India. Anywhere else? It started in China, that's right. Many thousands of years ago. Now there's a story about how it started. This emperor was sitting under his favorite tree, which happened to be a Camellia sinensis, it's called, and that's a tea tree, a tea bush. And he liked a nice cup of hot water for his stomach. And he was sipping his hot water, and some of the leaves fell into the water. It's a silly story, really. But when he tasted it, he said, this is quite good. And that's how they discovered how to make tea. So the Chinese started it, and it became really popular, and they made all kinds of tea, but most of their teas were not what we think of tea. They weren't brown tea like the tea that eventually came from India. They were green teas, and you can. And now, why is the difference between green and brown tea, black tea? Anybody know? Younger, yeah. No, it's not because it's younger. It's because it's not oxidized. Oxidized, see, I learned a long word from this book, which nobody else knew what it meant. But it meant that when they pick the tea leaves, they lay them out and they let them wither. Just like an apple. If you take a bite and you leave the apple, it goes brown. So the green leaves are laid out and they start to go brown. Now, at some point, they will start processing them, I suppose is the word you use, but they take these trees. The green tea is, the processing is stopped when it's still green. So it's fairly young leaves from the tea. And then there's another kind of tea, which is very, very pale yellow, and that's, I think it's called oolong. And that tea is very, very, everybody loves that tea. It's very delicate. Yeah, very, very expensive in China anyway. So China had tea for many, many thousands of years, really, and nobody really knew about it until people started traveling, and then all these big, the Dutch and the English and the Portuguese started these trading companies. So that's how they discovered this tea, and then the Buddhist monks that came to visit China took it back to Japan, and there it became famous in Japan, and they liked the green tea very much, and that became very popular in Japan. So now we have two countries, and those monks and other people took the green tea and they traveled all around that area, and they went to Tibet and places like that. And in the end, tea became quite fashionable all over that part of the country. Now, the British were having discovered tea. Now, who brought tea to England was Charles II's wife. Her name was Catherine of Braganza. She was from Portugal, and she was used to drinking tea. So when she came to marry Charles II, I'm sorry, mixing them up really. When she came to marry Charles, she brought tea with her, and she introduced it to her ladies. And they really liked it too. And then they started drinking it. And they had coffee houses. This was in the 16th century. And then later on, they had coffee houses, but only men were allowed, of course. And then later on, they had tea houses. Again, no ladies. So the ladies decided if they wanted to have tea, they'd have to have it at home. So they started buying the loose tea. Now, the lady who started, it was a lady again. That's women. We're responsible for a lot of good things in the world, you know. The lady that really introduced proper afternoon tea was the 7th Duchess of Bedford. Her name was Anne. And, you know, they used to eat a lot. They used to eat a lot of food. Well, they do eat a lot of food, the upper classes, I have to say. It's a wonder they aren't all enormous elephants, but they do. They eat a lot. But anyway, when Lady Anne introduced it, it became a sort of social thing because she was hungry. They had luncheon. Luncheon was probably about 11 or something in the morning, and then they had to go all the way till 8 o'clock at night, and she was quite famished by then. So she started having her tea, which she had found, and then she had little pastries and stuff like that, and it became popular. But it only became popular with the upper classes. Because the ordinary working people, they couldn't afford tea. It was a luxury. And then what happened, I'm not very good at remembering the dates, I have to tell you that. But what happened after the tea was so expensive and so taxed, they started smuggling it into the country. And then they thought, maybe we should find somewhere else where we could grow tea. So it was the East India Company, sent a man, he was a spy, to China, and he stole some of the tea plants. And he brought them back and he planted them. And they learned to make tea like that through devious means, to grow tea. And then they found in India, there were certain parts of India, a place called Assam, that it grew very well there on the slopes. So now the English had their own and the British and the East India companies, they had their own source of tea. They could go bypass China. They didn't have to have Chinese tea. And so tea became popular in England now because it was more available for ordinary people. But it was still quite a luxury. And then when it got taxed, and you know what, politicians will tax anything really that doesn't move, and they taxed the tea and the people got upset. And then they did bring the tax down, and gradually in the end of the 18th, beginning of the 19th century, it became much more of an ordinary drink for ordinary people. I do believe in America you had a problem with tea. I did read something about it. I think you threw it in the sea or something. What a waste of good tea. But I think that the government was up to it again, was taxing everybody. So they threw it overboard into the harbour in a place called Boston, I think it was. There's a Boston in England, I mixed them up, but I know it was in America where they did that. So tea became very, very popular and everybody started to drink it. And also, because I have to say this, there's always people who, not good people. They would, sometimes, the wealthy people would have the tea and make the tea and drink the tea, and then they'd dry the tea leaves and sell them or give them to the grocer to sell back to some poor people who were getting very thin tea, I have to tell you. And then there was all sorts of things that I did read somewhere awful that they used to mix it with manure, things like that. Anything to make it brown, yeah. Because the English tea was brown, yes, yeah. So I think, I don't know if any of you have any questions about tea, do you? All right, well, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about an afternoon tea at Downton House it's quite an occasion. Her ladyship will have her friends there. And sometimes the butler will serve it, but quite often, sometimes the footman. But quite often she asks me to do it. I think she thinks I've got a knack with it or something, I don't know. I'm also quite good at arranging flowers, so she'll have me help her with the flowers. I mean, I tell you, that's why I think I might get to be the housekeeper one day. Anyway, she has her friends into her, she usually has it in the front parlour, and it has to be just so. Beautiful china. She's got a china cabinet. My mum had a few old little bits of blue and white stuff, and this Miss Lady Carperby has a room, well, it's not as big as this, but it's full of beautiful, beautiful china from all over the world, and especially from China. Anyway, we set up the table for her. Now, some of the things that people like to eat with their tea, one of them is scones. And I made a few just to show you. This is a scone here. This has got currants in it. And you open this up and you eat it you can have it with butter or you can have it with cream and strawberries or jam. That's very nice. And sometimes you'll have little sandwiches. Now, a ladyship's got a perfectly good set of teeth. She's got a perfectly good set of teeth, but she still likes all the crust cut off her bread. She won't eat the crust. When I was a little girl growing up, my mum used to say, eat the crust, it'll make your hair curly. And I used to eat all the crust and look at it, never worked. And then, so we make things like cucumber sandwiches. You have to cut the bread very thin slices. Sometimes cook will roll it out with a rolling pin so it's really thin, and then she puts the cucumber. Smoked salmon is considered very nice, and watercress when it's in season. That's another one that they like in their sandwiches. And pretty little cakes, things like that, to tempt the appetite until they go to their dinner, which starts about 8 o'clock. So you can see how very hungry they must be by then. So I'm just going to go here and to try and do a little demonstration. First of all, I have to put the kettle on. This is a borrowed American kettle. I have nothing to do with it. We have a nice spirit kettle at Daunton Hall. And here's the tea. Now, we make our tea, obviously, with loose tea. And like I told you, I'm going to make English tea, but English Indian tea. But like a ladyship, I couldn't find the Earl Grey today. I looked for it. Perhaps we drank it up. I wouldn't have drunk it. And the first thing you have to do when you're making tea is you must have the water boiling hot. You can't let it boil and then come off the boil and put it back on and do that a few times, because it does something to the water. It doesn't do it right with the tea. And the next thing I've got to wait for this pot to boil, but the next thing you have to do is you have to warm the pot before you make the tea. You can't put tea into boiling water into a cold pot. So as soon as this kettle boils, I'll show you what you do. And now, do you put the milk in first or not? Does anybody know? Yes? No. No, I'm sorry to tell you, madam, it's no. Now, there is a little bit of controversy about that because some people like to put it in first, but no, you should put tea into the cup before you add the milk. It's going to you'll dilute the tea, and it won't be as good. And it will have gone off the boil too with the cold milk. Now, some people like lemon in their tea. I've got a lemon here. Now, I would serve this with little thin slices to put in the cup. But her ladyship went to Germany recently, and she came back with this little thing. It's very sweet, actually. You just squeeze the lemon over this little squeezer like this. And then when you've got enough juice, you can pour the juice directly into the teacup. It saves having a bit of lemon floating around. That's quite a nice little gadget. I'm still listening for that kettle. They say a watched pot never boils, and it's a true statement. I've got a proper big spoon. I'm going to use this one. So that's what we do. We have afternoon tea. Now, what happens in the kitchen? Well, her ladyship has her dainty sandwiches with no crusts on them and dainty little things to eat. And what we have in the kitchen is the cook's lovely brown tea. You can stand the spoon in. And she makes lovely bread. We'll have a great big slab of bread spread with farm butter and a big blob of strawberry jam. Eats that stuff. Put some meat on you, that does. I do think it's boiling. I'm having a little bit of time trying to hold this and make tea, so you'll have to excuse me. So here it is boiling. Now I'm just putting a bit in. I'm just putting this down for a minute. So I want to slush it round. And then I've got to get rid of the hot water. Now I'm going to put the tea in the pot. And I think I'm going to borrow a spoon from over there because these are little bitty spoons. Thank you. So what you do is you put 1 teaspoonful for each person, and then you add 1 for the pot. That's the rule. So if you're going to have 4 people, you're going to put 5 5 teaspoons. Then you're going to pour the boiling water on it. Now, you have to, what they say in our part of the woods, is you let it mash. You let it brew up a little bit for a few minutes before you stir it. And then when that time is up, you're going to stir it and you're going to pour it. Now, you don't want her ladyship or any of her friends to get a mouthful of tea leaves, do you? So you have to use a little sieve to sieve out the tea leaves in the cup. That's not a very pretty one because I couldn't steal one from her ladyship's silver. She'd have noticed. So I'm going to give this a bit of a stir. Put the lid back on. And then with one hand, I'm hoping to be able to pour it, not over the pretty tablecloth. Oh, I have to say, I like a nice cup of tea myself. And then you add the milk, or the lemon, whichever you want. And give it a little stir. And I hope you don't mind, I'm going to take a sip. It's not like cook's tea, but it's better than that other stuff. Earl Grey tea is flavoured with something called bergamot. I didn't know what bergamot was. It turns out to be the skin of some kind of orange they grow in Spain. I'll tell you. Oh, that's very good. Anyway, so what else is to tell you about tea? Okay, so when we've had our tea in the basement, we sometimes read the tea leaves. Has anybody ever had your tea leaves read? It's quite a bit of fun, really. I actually don't really believe in it, but anyway, I just have to look up something. Okay, so what you do with the tea leaves is when you finish drinking your tea, you turn your saucer and you tip the tea up when it's done, and you give it a little thing, and then you turn it back up. Now what's left in the teacup are sort of tea leaves that cling to the edge of the cup. And what you do with that is you say, you look at, you read it, you look. Now, sometimes those tea leaves will form like a little picture or something. Now, if you get a little heart, well, that must be you're going to come into some love or something. Going to be love or something. Love is in your future. If it's a bird, it's freedom. Maybe you're going to get a day off next week. You don't know. And all kinds of animals. If you get a knife, that's not a good sign. I wouldn't want to get a knife in mine. Somebody's got it in for you. They're going to put it in your back, stab you in the back. Yeah, the sun is success. Yeah. Now, if the tea leaves cling to the top of the cup, like inside of the cup, that means that's going to happen now, presently, soon. If it clings to the bottom, it's what's in the future. And I can't tell you how many silly little kitchen maids, well, we have a saying in Yorkshire, don't get your knickers in a twist. And it means don't get upset, because they get upset and they think it's true, and their boyfriend doesn't love them or something. Well, they don't have boyfriends, but somebody they're sweet on doesn't love them, and they get all upset. Anyway, I don't know if you have any questions for me. I'd love to answer them.
I have one. In England, are there metal tea balls on the little chain? Is that something they have, or is that just more American?
Well, you might find those in lower class homes, but not in her ladies. No. I was talking to a lot of ladies once, and somebody put their hand up and asked me, do you use tea bags? Well, I looked at her and I said, would you please say that again? And she said, do you use tea bags? And I said, you make tea in a bag? I never heard of such nonsense. I'm sorry, madam, you can't make tea in a bag, you need a teapot. So people have funny ideas about it, anyway. What I did want to tell you is I'm wearing my absolutely best uniform, and I'm wearing a pretty brooch that somebody bought me a long time ago. He had blue eyes, I won't tell you who it was. And this is what I wear in the afternoon. So when you get up at the crack of dawn to clean everything and make sure everything's perfect, you're not wearing black and white, you're wearing like a calico dress, usually sort of blue or grey, and then you wear a calico apron over that, and that's your working clothes. And you don't answer the door if you're not wearing this. And then after lunch, you put this on, and then you're all ready for the rest of the day. So it's quite hard being a maid, but it's got its pleasures, you know, up and down. I don't know if any of you have ever had any experience of it, have you? Being a maid? I don't think you sort of ladies are the kind that would be maids myself. You might have them, but you might not be one. Yes. Yes, there's some...
Did they drink iced tea?
No, I've heard, no, we don't drink iced tea. In fact, have you ever had an English summer? Sometimes it's on a Wednesday, summer in England, and you wouldn't want ice in anything. I never heard of putting ice in drinks, no. Well, the teapot holds enough for about 4 cups, 5 cups, so, yeah. I think most teapots are about the same size. You do have great big silver ones. This is just a mere little china one, but her ladyship's got silver. Oh my goodness, cleaning that silver, that's another job we have to do. And it has to be done fairly regularly. And all the spoons have to be counted, you know, in case anybody pops one in their pocket. Anyway, yes.
When did 11s become popular?
When did
11s?
11s? Well, 11s, I think, means something to eat at 11 in the morning. Well, for us maids, cook makes us a lovely cup of tea, but I don't think a ladyship eats then, because their breakfast is very late. You see, they get up and they've planned their day, and her ladyship might do but they have their breakfast late. We get up at the crack of dawn. We have to have our breakfast in between their breakfast and the cleaning. And yes, it's a different world down there, you know. So we get a cup of tea. If we're going to the kitchen for something and cook's just made one, we just sort of stand there and she'll give you tea. Even she's an old grump sometimes, but she's really got a good heart underneath. Anybody else? I was going to say, yes.
Do they drink any coffee at all?
Well, coffee is, yes, it does get made, but the British like tea better, yes. When I came to America, I was quite surprised how much coffee people drank and didn't understand tea, you know. So now I've introduced all my friends to tea over here, and they love it. Some of the things I was going to tell you about the maid's life. Is anybody here about Boxing Day, Christmas Day? Well, Christmas Day, you don't know about that. We don't usually get any time off of Christmas Day, but we do get some time off the next day. And then we get a present from her ladyship and his lordship. Now, they don't give you anything that you really would absolutely love to have. They usually give you a length of fabric so you can make yourself a new dress for cleaning and something like that. You don't get any pretties or anything like that, but it is nice to get a present at Christmas. Yeah. And once a year, in some houses, I've heard this, not that I've experienced it, they have a custom where, well, it's ludicrous really, where the lord and lady become the servants, and they call it the servants' ball, and they wait on you. well, you can imagine it's very uncomfortable making because you don't feel right, you know. You're supposed to be standing up and serving her, and you're sitting down and she's serving you. But it's like they play at it. And I don't know if any of you have read history, you know about Marie Antoinette. She was a beautiful, well, she was a mistress. She was a friend of the king, and she used to play at being a dairy maid and things like that. And she'd dress up as a dairy maid because she never lifted a little white hand to do anything. So it's a bit like that. Anyway. Well, I think I've sort of come to the end of my talk. I'm just, is there anything I've missed out? I don't know. Have I given you a good taste?
Brenda, thank you so much. This was very enlightening and it was a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I would like to say something else.
Oh.
Just one thing. In the opening bit, they said, Susan read that I was working in a Scottish man's house. And it truly was like a taste of being in service, because it was in the very north of Scotland, in a place called Caithness. And the lady of the house, the mother of the little children I took care of, she was the aristocrat, and her husband was the money. He had a big steel holdings or something. So it was, and she was very much more egalitarian than he was. And I did have the nursery wing, and it was a whole wing of the house just for the children. There was a nursery and a big bath, and the bath was about this high to bathe the children in. And I was a bit cut off, you know. I mean, I was up there in the north of Scotland, and one day, this will sort of sum it up for you, really. I did ask to go and sit in the servants' hall for meals because the family actually ignored me. I mean, they talked over my head, really, but I felt like I was a piece of wallpaper. So I asked one day if I couldn't perhaps have my meals downstairs with the other servants. There were quite a few of them too, and they looked quite relieved, and they said yes. And so then I got a little scoop on the family, which was fun. But one day, I was sitting there, and the lady, her name, I don't want to give any names, she and her husband were discussing me in front of me. And they said, and the wife said, "Oh, darling," she said, "you know, Nanny, it's rather lonely up here. There's no young men around." She said, "I was wondering if she would like to go out with Robin." Now, Robin was her brother. And I went, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah," she said, he's awfully nice, and he's a young man. And he had started a famous glass works in Caithness, and it's quite collectible glass now. It's called Caithness glass. And I was quite chuffed to think she thought I was good enough to go out with her brother. And across the table came the husband, and he said, "Oh, darling, I think he thought I might become his sister-in-law, I don't know." He said, "Oh, no," he said, "How about the gamekeeper's sons?" He said, "You know, Nanny, they're quite intelligent because they spend their winters reading." And I thought, shows you where he thinks of me. So I went out with a farmer instead.
So now we're doing the 50-50, and I'll have Barbara and Susan come up and do the raffle. Also, at the 50-50, we have, I think it's 16. Is that correct, Susan? Susan? 16? I'm sorry? 16 teapots? Yes. So they'll count them. So as soon as you get your teapot, please take it to your table so we don't have a fight over them. That will be out of the running. And there's some on the windowsill as well.